Hello everyone, how are you feeling today? It's Eros everyone here, and today I'm coming at you with a Salamangreat deck profile. Now I know, you're probably wondering, why do I bring you guys Salad Boys? Well, Salad Boys is not really an inventive deck, it's pretty straightforward. Well, A, you need to be a little bit more inventive now with Salamangreats, because a few things happened in the ban list like a month ago. And B, well, I'm still waiting for an order for some of my cards. For example, my vendor deck profile. Like I'm ordering like I don't remember how many cards. I think it's like 40 new cards I ordered in mail, and those 40 cards are going to create so many decks. Like you have no idea. But unfortunately, I don't have them on me yet. They're probably supposed to arrive like next week or so, hopefully, or even this week. But unfortunately, they're not here yet. So unfortunately, the decks are not finished, so yeah, sorry about that. But for the time being, we do have Salamangreats, which are still very, very fun, and they're now kind of get toned down to be a normal deck and not over-the-top reoccurrence deck. So I kind of like the deck for that as well right now more. As well as the deck is pretty much budget, so you'll still be able to pick it up if you need to. And just generally, yeah, this is a really fun deck. Like, seriously though, even though it's not that inventive or something crazy about it, it's still a very, very fun deck, and a deck that I still recommend for beginners. So let's get started with a deck profile. So starting things off, we will run the one copy of the Lone Gazelle. Everybody know what Gazelle does. Gazelle is pretty much your heart and soul of the deck. I'm not sure if like putting Gazelle and Circle to one was the best choice. But for anybody who think like Salamangreats are dead, you still technically have 6 copies of this in your deck with the 1 additional Circle, the Lady Debug, and 3 Signet Mining. So it's pretty much a normal way to see Gazelle. Like you have 6 copies of a card in your deck, not like 12 million. Like we used to have like 12 copies overall of the deck. Like, you know, when those cards been at 3 or technically 10, because I think like Lady Debug got limited before we got Signet Mining. But you know what I mean? Just like normal deck only have 6 copies of a card like when it's maxed at full power, but this we have like 10, so it's like, yeah, I think going down to 6 and putting this card down to 1 was actually a smart choice. So yeah. Moving on to the next best card, 3 copies of Spinny. Spinny now is absolutely important. You need to see this card in your hand as soon as possible, so that's why we maximize on discard. This one's pretty much a discard, and then you pretty much boost a Salamangreat you control by 500 attack until the end of the turn. Or if you control a Salamangreat monster other than himself, you can just special summon it from the graveyard and then banish it when it leave the field. But the more important thing about this is just a level 3 that you can use for a Mirage Stalio, which now is a lot more important to do your combos. Like if you're able to see like, you know, Bellioniques and then 2 level 3s, or even just 2 level 3s, like, you know, do your normal combos, it's get you there. The moment that you're able to like make a Bellioniques and have 2 additional level 3s on the board, you're just doing the normal combo, so keep that in mind as well. So that's why we're playing a little bit more of a turbo combo weird cards for like, you know, special summoning level 3s and stuff like that. Moving on, next we're on 3 copies of Foxy. Foxy is just a really nice card. Unfortunately, it got downgraded in a way, because the reoccurrence of like the top 3 cards of your deck is really cool, but unfortunately we have like 16 copies of Salamangreat cards right now. I don't remember exactly, but something along those lines. And because of that, yeah, it's kind of hard to draw with it. A card afterwards, but it's still pretty possible, like, you know, to get another resource to your hand. But unfortunately, yeah, it's a little bit worse. Unfortunately, there is a particular other card that I actually maybe prefer to replace once we'll get to it, for the cards that, like, you know, he's still not out in the TCG, but I'm going to talk about it after I'll talk about these 3 guys, which are 1 Falco, 1 Jack Jaguar, and 1 Fowl. Fowl is a card I consider bumping up to 2 because it's really good. Your normal special summon Salamangreat, you just get to special summon this guy directly from your hand, which is really powerful and sometimes really useful, because sometimes you don't really care about the rank 4 aspect, but the fact that he's able to special summon himself. Jack Jaguar is just really nice to summon with Mirage Stalio, and just Falco is just a nice recurrent card, or just a good card in general. If you see your Jack Jaguar in your hand, this is pretty much your next best target. And that pretty much does it for the Salamangreat monsters. And like I said, this one is I want to bump up to 2. And the other one that I might actually like play as well, or maybe kind of cut Foxy in some copies to play it, because I feel like it's better right now, is Salamangreat Coyote. Which is, I'm playing testing with this guy, and YGO Pro for now is like proving really nicely. And for anybody who don't know who Coyote is, he's a level 3 Salamangreat monster with 1000 attack, 200 defense, and his effect states that during the end phase, if he was sent to the graveyard, you get to either special summon a monster for Salamangreat from your graveyard, or to add it back to your hand, which is really useful because, for example, let's say I use the Gazelle, I can get the Gazelle back to my hand, and like if my opponent trying to banish it or get rid of it, or I don't have it and my opponent broke my board, I still have the ability to come back. So that's really important. I might actually play multiple copies of him or just one and still play the Foxy, we'll see. For the time being, I'm not 100% sure. But it's working quite fine in YGO Pro at least. Next up, we run the one copy of Lady Debug. Lady Debug got to 1 and still a very important card. You normal summon it, you search the Gazelle or whatever you need, and it's just really useful. So run one copy of it, which you can only run one anyway. Next up, the most important card out of the Cybers package that are not Salamangreats. Flame Buffalo. This guy is actually really important because we lost consistency. You pretty much normal summon this, you use it to link summon Bellionix, and then you kind of like chain link 1 him, chain link 2 Bellionix. You get to discard a card, draw 2, and also search Sanctuary uninterrupted. Now, of course, your opponent can technically play Ash of Bellionix to stop you from getting Sanctuary, but most people don't do that because they don't like to waste their Ash on something that is a little bit minor, because getting the Sanctuary is not that important, but getting the ability to like reoccur the cards is what important. So like, you know, just this, like the draw and discard is actually very important. Getting all those combo pieces is a lot more important for you to getting the Sanctuary. So like, people will not mostly use your their Ash Blossom or Effect Veilers on Sanctuary and on Bellionix, and you can just do the other way around if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Just the point is like this card is really good, like Flame Buffalo, because it just discard the Cybers, draw 2 cards is actually pretty useful. And for the last card of the monster lineup that you technically use, there's another one that I'm using, but we're going to talk about in a second. We run 3 copies of Backup Secretary. Secretary, I think that's how you pronounce it. Never mind. Anyway, this girl right here is really awesome. She's pretty much a free special summon if you control Cybers. And if you have Flame Buffalo and she's in your hand and you used already 1 copy, discard and draw 2 cards. Or even if you have 2 copies of her, you normal summon 1, special summon the other. It's just a really good card, and it's really useful. There's another 1 or 2 cards I would consider adding if we had more space, which are Widget Kid, I believe, and the other one is Sea Archiver. But you know, this just proved to be the best. So you know, running 3 of this card is really useful. That's it for the Cybers lineup. Now we'll move on to the hand traps. 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Pretty awesome. This card is mandatory. 3 copies of Effect Veilers. This also pretty mandatory for Salamangreats. And then 2 copies of Ash to round off the hand traps. And Ash is actually really important because Ash also served as an Italy target. Or just because like Italy target, like having Italy is essentially, which you know, if for anybody who don't know what that is, it's emergency teleport. Emergency teleport is really important because emergency teleport giving you the option of like increasing the percentage to see like 3 monsters for, you know, for your full combo of like getting Bellionix, Mirage Stalio, and all the shenanigans that you usually do. And also, like, worst case scenario, like, you also use the Italy to special summon this to your field, and then you can use her effect from Disruption from the field. This card, depending, unlike Ash Blossom, I don't know why I lost the word there for a second. Unlike Ash Blossom, she able to pretty much use her effect from the field. You able to send her from the field to the graveyard to interrupt, to destroy a card on the field. So that's really useful. And that's it for the hand traps, at least for me. You could run Phantasmi, you could run Inferment and Permanence, but I just don't have those, and they're very expensive. And money doesn't grow on trees. Next up, we're running 1 copy of Circle, 1 copy of Sanctuary, one copy of Will, and it might surprise you, but this card is actually not that bad. I am considering maybe cutting it down when we'll get Coyote, but for the time being, it's actually doing its job, especially in the mirror match. That's one copy of Reoccurrence. Reoccurrence is actually really, really good because, like I said, sometimes you want to get your Gazelle back, and you don't have your Gazelle. So until we'll get Coyote, this is actually really useful to reoccur your Gazelle back. Really useful. Will of the Salamangreat is just really, really good for special summoning. Sanctuary is just very important, and then you have Circle, which is pretty much your main searcher of the deck. And also another thing about Reoccurrence is that when Reoccurrence get sent to the graveyard by your opponent card, if it like get destroyed, you pretty much can add a Salamangreat spell or trap from your deck to your hand. So you can always use this card as like a bait in your back row and just, you know, search. So that's not that bad as well. Also, it can also be destroyed by you. So that's another important thing to remember if you want to. Next up, I'm proxying this because I'm not having the money for like $40 a copy for your Sign It Mining. This is probably the most expensive card in the deck, and probably the card that, like, you know, if you want to play Salamangreat, you have to play this right now, and if you didn't get your copies, unlike like me, it's a little bit of a problem. But you play 3 copies of Sign It Mining. Unfortunately, like, if you don't have it, it's a little bit of a problem. But if you have it, good. If you don't and you want to play this, it's a little bit of an expensive side, so maybe not recommend it that much. Then 1 Emergency Teleport, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Foolish Burial for your extenders. Yes, Foolish Burial is actually pretty good. You are able to send your Spinny to the graveyard or any other Salamangreats that you wish. Sometimes you even want to send the Gazelle if you don't see it, and then just reoccur it. And then Monster Reborn is just always Monster Reborn, and Emergency Teleport is just really good for having an interruption or just a special summon for the rank 3 things that I talked to you about a few moments ago with Ghost Ogre. That's pretty much does it for the spells. 10 spells, traps, 1 Rage, and 1 Roar. You could bump one of these to 2 if you want to. I just don't feel like you need 2 of each of these, like any of these. Unfortunately, because the deck lost its consistency, it's a little bit like bad if you open up with multiple of those and don't see your combo pieces. It's really, really bad, but they're still really good for cards. Instead of that, I'm actually running a card that, like, you could just play multiples a turn, and that's 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. You could switch this for Sullen Strike, or mix them up, or whatever you want. But I feel like Judgment is essentially better, because Judgment is, like, you can always pay your half of your life points, and it's good against almost every deck around. Like, in monster-heavy formats, maybe Judgment, not Judgment, Strike is better, but mostly, like, right now, Judgment is superior, in my opinion, for Strike. At least in my experience, and with the people I play. And that's pretty much does it for the main deck. Now I'll move on to the extra deck. So first off, for the Salamangreat lineup, you run the 3 Balyoniques. This card is actually very, very important. I've seen some people cutting this card down to 2. I kind of don't understand right now. Now that the deck a little bit suffered losses, I think the deck needs to be a little bit more sticky to the board, and this card is actually very, very important. There are some combos that you actually use 2 of this now, instead 1, so playing 3 of this is actually still very, very important. Maybe one will get like the level 4 one, rank 4, Link 4 one, sorry. The Link 4 one, which is, I think, I don't remember, I think Phoenix something? That guy, maybe then you want to cut this guy down to 2, but I feel like it's so important for the combos, and the fact that it's able to make your Salamangreats stickier to the board is just, it's something that you cannot pass on. Then 3 copies of the main man, Sunlight Wolf. This is pretty much your reoccurrence guy, and probably the best guy to end up your board going first, because it's reoccurring a spell or trap. And he's pretty much reoccurring a monster, which is also really important to your hand. It's just a nice recyclability card. Then 2 copies of Heat Leo. You don't need more than 2 Heat Leo. Heat Leo is just really good going second. Being able to spin with the 2 copies, 2 spells and traps, and then also kind of OTK your opponent is, I think it's mostly enough. 2 copies of Mirage Stallion. Now this card is actually very, very important to play at 2. Because, well, you technically kind of need it at 2 right now, trust me. And it's just a really good card by himself. And then the 1 copy of Violet Chimera to be good in the mirror match. I don't run Fusion of Fire and Super Poly in the main, because it's not that great, but, like, you know, going second is actually very, very nice to run those, and they're very, very useful. And then for the non-Salamangreat monsters, first off, let's start with the Lynx, which is Hita and Phoenix. Really, really useful for the fires. And then I also run one copy of Borreload. Borreload is just a pretty good card. I like it more than Boral Sword because this deck can OTK really, really easily, even without the Boral Sword. And I feel like Borreload is essentially a better card to kind of like deal with your opponent board, which is something that this deck needs. And then lastly, just pretty much for your level 4 Salamangreats, one copy of Abyss Dweller. Pretty simple. It's still a very, very good rank 4. And that's pretty much does it for the deck profile. Very, very simple, very straightforward. Unfortunately, like I said, I think like the deck kind of got crippled, and Signet Mining is a little bit too expensive for some people. But if you have the money for it, you pull it, or you have it generally laying around. Just got it as a card because, you know, people kind of like didn't think about it being really, really good up to now, and you already have it around. I think it's actually pretty cheap if you're able to pick that up. And if you were able to maybe get, like, you know what I mean, just if you already have it, the deck is pretty cheap, and it's still very functionable. Yeah, sure, it's not as good as it used to be, but the deck is still very, very functionable, and it is an anime deck, which a lot of people don't remember those kind of things. This is an anime deck. I could see this deck getting additional more support that is good enough to be fitting in, that maybe even going to switch things around and make the deck still be able to play the rank 3 engine, but maybe give them like a better, like, you know, a worse searcher that they can still play to get the Gazelle or something like you know how that works. Konami like to sometimes copy and print cards that are essentially the same, but in a different name for a different archetype. So we're going to see about that. For the time being, that's pretty much it for the Salamangreats. And next time, I'm hoping we'll be able to get the, you know, the cards that I need to make, for example, a Vendred update. But until then, see you guys next time. And remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, guys, and stay safe.